The moment every promise in my marriage shattered wasn't when I found proof of betrayal. It was when I made 3 simple phone calls in the middle of a bright Tuesday afternoon. My wife had smiled before leaving the house, kissed my cheek, and told me she was spending the day with her closest friends. But one after another, all 3 women answered. One was grocery shopping with her children. Another was at work. The third was visiting her elderly father. None of them had seen my wife. In less than 5 minutes, the life I believed I had built suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps our community continue sharing stories that remind us even broken hearts can find healing. Graham had always believed that trust was quieter than love. Love filled anniversaries with flowers, birthdays with laughter, and ordinary afternoons with unexpected hugs. Trust lived in the small moments nobody celebrated. It lived in believing a text without checking, accepting an explanation without suspicion, and sleeping peacefully because another person's word was enough. For 12 years, Graham had trusted his wife, Marissa, without hesitation. They had built a modest but comfortable life in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. They weren't wealthy, but they had enough. Graham worked as a building inspector, while Marissa had recently started managing a local art gallery after years of working part-time. Their teenage daughter, Tessa, was preparing for college applications, and their home was filled with photographs from vacations, birthdays, school plays, and backyard barbecues. It looked like the kind of family everyone assumed would stay together forever. Over the previous few months, subtle changes had quietly entered their marriage. Marissa smiled less often. She guarded her phone more carefully. She became unusually protective of her schedule. Graham noticed these things but convinced himself that stress explained everything. The gallery had expanded. Her responsibilities had increased. Everyone went through difficult seasons. Love meant giving people room to breathe. That Tuesday afternoon, Graham received a call from Tessa's school asking whether someone could pick her up early because she had developed a severe migraine. Graham was nearly an hour away inspecting a construction site, so he called Marissa. She answered quickly, sounding slightly distracted, and apologized, explaining she was already having lunch with her girlfriends across town. Graham accepted the explanation immediately until the school secretary gently reminded him that Tessa was becoming increasingly ill. Hoping one of Marissa's friends might help, he decided to call them. The first answer surprised him. The second unsettled him. The third destroyed him. His hands trembled as he sat inside his truck under the afternoon sun. Every possibility rushed through his mind. An affair. A secret debt. Another family. A medical diagnosis she couldn't bear to reveal. Fear has a way of creating stories far darker than reality. Instead of confronting her immediately, Graham asked a coworker to finish the inspection, picked up Tessa himself, and spent the rest of the afternoon caring for his daughter. She slept on the living room couch while sunlight streamed through the windows. Graham made soup, placed a cool towel on her forehead, and kept glancing toward the front door. Marissa finally returned just before dinner carrying several shopping bags and wearing the same relaxed smile she had left with that morning. She spoke naturally about how wonderful it had been catching up with the girls, mentioning imaginary conversations Graham now knew had never happened. He listened quietly, his heart breaking not because he had caught a lie but because she seemed completely comfortable telling it. That evening, after Tessa felt better and retreated to her room, Graham gently admitted that he had spoken to all 3 friends while trying to arrange help for their daughter. The color slowly disappeared from Marissa's face. She sat motionless for several long seconds before whispering that she hadn't expected him to make those calls. Silence settled between them like an invisible wall. Marissa eventually admitted she hadn't been with anyone she had named. Graham expected an immediate confession of infidelity. Instead, she simply began crying. Real tears. Not dramatic ones meant to escape responsibility but exhausted tears that seemed to come from somewhere buried very deep. She asked for one chance to explain everything the following afternoon because someone else deserved to tell part of the story first. Graham wanted answers immediately, but something in her expression felt different from guilt alone. It looked like fear mixed with shame. The next day, they drove together during the late morning to a small rehabilitation center several towns away. Graham had never seen the building before. Marissa led him through quiet hallways filled with sunlight until they reached a counseling room where an older woman named Eleanor waited. The truth that unfolded over the next hour was nothing Graham could have imagined. Nearly 6 months earlier, Marissa had accidentally reunited with her older brother, Nolan, after more than 20 years without contact. Their childhood had been filled with instability, addiction, and neglect. While Marissa had escaped through a scholarship and eventually built a stable life, Nolan had remained trapped in cycles of substance abuse and homelessness. Ashamed of her painful past, Marissa had shared very little about her childhood with Graham. She wanted her husband and daughter to know the woman she had become, not the frightened girl she once was. When Nolan finally reached out, he was physically frail, emotionally broken, and desperately trying to enter treatment. Marissa secretly paid for counseling, transportation, meals, and rehabilitation costs. She visited him every week because he had nobody else willing to answer his calls. Nolan had begged her not to tell anyone until he completed treatment because he couldn't bear the thought of being judged again if he failed. Marissa believed she was protecting both her brother and her family. But every hidden visit required another lie. Every act of compassion quietly damaged the trust inside her own marriage. Eleanor gently explained that family secrets often begin with love but survive through fear. Marissa had convinced herself that one more lie would prevent unnecessary worry. Then another. Then another. Eventually the truth became harder to reveal than the deception itself. Graham sat in stunned silence. His heart felt pulled in opposite directions. He wasn't imagining betrayal anymore. He was confronting something more complicated. Marissa hadn't been secretly loving another man. She had been secretly carrying the weight of a family she thought she had escaped forever. Still, the lies hurt. Deeply. Compassion could explain deception. It could never erase it. During the weeks that followed, healing proved much slower than revelation. Graham struggled every time Marissa left the house. Even ordinary errands awakened uncomfortable questions. Trust, once cracked, refused to repair itself overnight. Marissa understood that apologies alone could not restore what dishonesty had damaged. She voluntarily shared every appointment, every visit, every financial expense connected to Nolan's recovery. She invited Graham to meet her brother whenever he felt ready. Eventually, Graham accepted. Nolan looked nothing like the dangerous image Graham had imagined. He appeared exhausted, humble, and painfully aware of the burden his existence had placed on his sister's marriage. He thanked Graham for simply showing up. Over several daytime visits, Graham slowly discovered the frightened man beneath years of addiction. Nolan never blamed anyone else for his failures. He openly admitted the opportunities he had wasted and the people he had disappointed. He spoke honestly about shame, loneliness, and the terrifying possibility of dying without ever becoming someone worth remembering. Those conversations quietly changed Graham. He realized people often carried invisible histories into every relationship. Some wounds healed openly. Others remained hidden because exposing them felt unbearable. Meanwhile, Tessa gradually learned the truth in age-appropriate pieces. Instead of anger, she surprised both parents with extraordinary maturity. She reminded them that honesty after a mistake still mattered. She admitted she had sensed something was wrong for months and confessed that pretending everything was normal had frightened her more than the truth would have. Her words humbled both adults. The family began attending counseling together during the afternoons every other week. They learned that rebuilding trust required consistency instead of grand gestures. It required uncomfortable conversations, patient listening, and the willingness to acknowledge painful emotions without turning away. Months passed. Nolan completed rehabilitation. He found work repairing bicycles at a neighborhood shop and rented a modest apartment. Recovery remained difficult, but for the first time in decades, he celebrated an entire year without returning to old habits. One warm afternoon, the family gathered for a picnic in a public park. Children laughed nearby while elderly couples walked shaded paths. Graham watched Marissa sitting beside her brother as Tessa taught him a card game he had never learned during his chaotic childhood. For a long moment, Graham reflected on that terrible Tuesday afternoon when 3 phone calls had nearly destroyed everything. Those calls had uncovered lies. But they had also uncovered hidden pain. Without them, Marissa might have continued carrying impossible burdens alone. Without them, Nolan might never have become part of their family. Without them, Graham and Marissa might have continued drifting apart without understanding why. Trust had not returned exactly as it once existed. It had become something quieter. Stronger. More honest. It was no longer based on believing someone could never make mistakes. It rested on believing both people would eventually face the truth together, however painful that truth might be. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment and tell us whether you believe trust can truly be rebuilt after painful lies when those lies were motivated by fear rather than betrayal. Your thoughts may encourage someone facing a similar struggle. As the afternoon sun painted long golden shadows across the park, Graham reached for Marissa's hand. She looked at him with uncertain eyes, still carrying regret for the choices she could never undo. He gently squeezed her fingers, not because the past had disappeared, but because they had finally stopped hiding from it. Beside them, Nolan laughed freely for perhaps the first time in decades, while Tessa smiled at the family she had almost watched fall apart. Graham understood then that forgiveness was never about pretending pain never happened. It was about refusing to let pain write the final chapter. Some marriages survive because nothing difficult ever happens. Others survive because 2 imperfect people choose honesty after failure, grace after disappointment, and hope after heartbreak. The second kind is rarely easy, but it is often the strongest. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that truth may hurt for a moment, but honesty, compassion, and forgiveness can heal wounds that silence never could.